What's up, Footer Nation? Gary Hootenholler here, and welcome to the NYBS Round Table. We got William here tonight. What's up, Will?
How's it going?
Just got done with one show, and let's rock out another one. So tonight you only got two of us, and which is cool because we can get kind of intimate with you guys a little bit and ladies about what the Bigfoot phenomena is, and our aspect and how we look at this whole phenomena. Tonight's show is a little bit different. Usually we're talking about educational things. Usually we're talking about things like what we find in the woods and things like that. We find this to be one of the most important things to talk about, though, is what got us into the Bigfoot field itself and what our encounter stories are from out in the field. A lot of times you'll hear us touch base on some of our encounters when we're talking at a show. We'll be like, oh yeah, well, we saw one, blah, blah, blah. And this is kind of what happened, but we don't ever really get in depth of what happened. So on this show, we're going to get kind of personal. We're going to get a little bit deep into our encounter stories with Sasquatch, and also what brought us to where we are today in the field. 2021, here we are. I can't believe I'm saying 2021, but in the field of Bigfoot research and actually just research in general. So Will, I talk all the time, as they all know. So let's start with you. Tell us like a little bit of, tell the Footer Nation your background, and for all the new people that are here, and also, get right into your story, because you have one of these stories that we don't really hear about too much, and this is amazing.
Well, my name is William Cabero. They call me the Hunter Man. I'm an avid outdoorsman. I do a lot of hunting, fishing, trapping, just like most people do today. But I also teach a lot of survival classes on how to survive in the woods and deal with the elements of nature and prepping. And if shit ever hits the fan, what to do to protect your family and how to work with your community as well. I got into the Bigfoot phenomenon, this whole thing, as of this year, after so many years. My first sighting was as a teenager. I was an outdoorsman. I'm hunting deer up, following the power lines, because it's always a big clear clutter on top of the mountain. So a lot of animals like to congregate on that area, because being that it's cut down, there's a lot of grass and mushrooms and foliage that grow on the lower ground, which is easy for them to find food. So I decided one morning to go up there in the mountain and sat there all day. I seen a few deer, but nothing for me to take. It's at the end of the day, and it was getting dark out. It's starting to rain out and getting foggy. Decided, let me get out of here and start heading home. I started descending down that hill, and it was quite a long ways. But as I'm coming down, it started getting darker and darker. And for some reason, I just got this like eerie feeling. So something told me turn around and look up that top of that side hill. Maybe there's a deer coming out. Maybe I might get a shot or something. But when I looked to the right of me on the power on those power cables at the pillar itself, on one of the poles, I seen something, a black object standing on the side. It seemed like it's peeking with a head sideways. So I says, oh, this is maybe a bear. Sometimes bear do that. They all hung around a tree and look at you. They'll put their paws around it and actually turn their head sideways and take a little peek. So I says, you know what? Let me see what that is. I picked up my rifle. I put it, since it was quite a ways, I put my scope on 9 power, and I was able to bring it and magnify it up. And then I looked and I see the eyes and stuff. But what caught my attention was the eyebrows and a little bit of the nose structure. And I says, wait a minute, if it's a bear, you would normally see like the brown silhouette or markings around the eyes, and then you will see a snout, and eventually you'll see the whole contour of the face. It was too flat. So I kind of like had a double take a couple of times. So what am I looking at? I'm looking at it, and I says, you know what? I have a chance right now. If either I take this bear down, which I assume was a bear, or if this is what I think it is, I'm going to make history. I could pull the trigger right now. For some reason, I just said to myself, if this is an existing creature, and as elusive as it is, it deserves to live. I says, there's no reason for me to take its life. It has no purpose for me whatsoever. I can't eat it. To me, it's a sin to kill an animal if you're not going to consume it. But, I looked at it for a few minutes, and then it started getting darker and darker to the point where I couldn't see through my lens anymore. But I got goosebumps and butterflies in my stomach, and something telling me it's time to get the hell out of here. It's getting dark. I got a long ways to go. So I descended and left. I went home and, I told the guys at the camp, I told them what happened. I seen something, they all laughed at it. I was a kid. I didn't think nothing of it. It's years later. I just, one day, after sitting in the living room and I seen a documentary on Bigfoot and stuff like that, I found it pretty fascinating. And I've always had that in the back of my head. What did I just look at? You know? And then as I was going through my Facebook stuff and I was looking at another board that showed tracks and stuff, and then I seen Gary on there. And then I kind of like reached out to him. And because I like what he was saying and I like what he was representing as far as research in the field. He wasn't no jokes about it. There was no nonsense with all this, crazy stuff that you see on Facebook and social media today. And he really impressed me with his work. And I decided to reach out to him and we touched base and then we compared notes and we talked and here we are today.
Yeah, and it's like we hear these stories now. And your story is amazing to me because, I've been on a couple of shows where I've talked to people as a guest, and we talk about how people have had that encounter where they saw a Sasquatch, right? But they weren't able to fully identify it. Some of them did. And they're out hunting. A lot of people down south always carry guns in the woods. It's not even, that's just what they do. And I know I've heard a couple of these stories where they had the rifle scope right up to them and this looking through their scope. They had the chance to pull that trigger, or they had a chance to, put an arrow in one. There is an encounter story I know from New York, once again, that I was speaking to somebody, and I actually went to one of his research areas because he brought me out there. And when he was a child, like when he was younger, not a child, but younger, he was out bow hunting. He's an avid bow hunter. And once again, he was in a tree stand, and the female walked right under him. Like, this came right through the woods, walked right under him. He could have put an arrow right through it. Like, it didn't even acknowledge that he was even in the tree. They didn't even acknowledge anything. And like, supposedly he said she went about her business like he wasn't even there. But he made that, decision not to. So why do you think, you're in that situation? Why do you think that people don't make these decisions to, become famous, as you would say? What is that?
I honestly believe those who really seen one tend to learn and understand and have a deep respect for nature and for Bigfoot in their encounters. Sometimes they question their state of mind on what was and what wasn't, and it kind of distorts them throughout their life, and they still think about it. But those who make that decision to leave it alone and become more infatuated with trying to study it and see if it exactly exists. I know what I saw. I know and believe it exists. But as a teenager, you're talking about many moons ago, I have to see it again. I have to find a track. I need some affirmative proof. Do I think they're out there? Yes, they are. Obviously, this has been going on from the beginning of the centuries, from the beginning of man, that, Bigfoot was been in the scene. How am I going to approach it is just basically honest research and find out what we can, because we want to know, is there Bigfoot in the Hudson Valley region or New York State? But it's so big and vast to cover so much area. So when you picked all of us, Gary, we actually are from different parts of the state. So we can cover a large area and a part of that map to map out stuff, to check out stuff, to investigate stuff. And sometimes, when we meet people, we see things, a lot of times, like in the other, as we talked once before, that things had become distorted. Story changes, the story timeline changes. People's reaction to how they handle it changes. And one of the biggest mistakes, I think, today in research is that people don't take enough information. So it's hard to follow up and find out what they have actually witnessed is true or not. And if we don't have the right amount of information, so, this is why we reach out to people and we talk to people. This is a serious thing because, I want to know for myself. I don't care about fame and glory. I don't care about how many Bigfoot pages I've been on or how many movies somebody watch or the mumbo jumbo from day one. You know what it is to get up in the woods every day and you go out hunting, or even go in the field, or even if I go hiking with my girl and I sit there and I'm looking and I hear the birds echoing in the distance and I'm wondering, are you really out there? What did I see? So it's just a personal thing. It's something for myself and something that I want to contribute to the team as far as showing my abilities of what we can utilize to help be more effective on our studies and research.
Now, all right, so when you had your encounter in the woods, right, and did that change as an avid hunter now? Like, we're both hunters, but you're like an avid hunter. So did that really change your perspective now? Like, you're in the woods your whole life, basically. You're out there bear hunting, deer hunting, all that stuff. And then you come across a squatch, like you say, that you made a decision. Does that change your perception of the environment now and how the woods are? Or have you always just thought that?
It does. It makes us realize just that every time we think we know the answers, we don't. There's so much going on and knowledge to learn in the wilderness that far beyond most people could comprehend. I mean, when you're out there hunting, you get a gun, you get your hunting license, you sit at a tree stand, that's it. But when you spend time in the woods week after week, I sleep in the woods for 2 or 3 weeks sometimes. I was a young, single at the time. I had no kids, and I was out there. I was a gun ho. I put my little tent out, and I sit there and hunted that one animal until I tracked him and found him and hunt him. I put a lot of time in there. But you come to realize that, there's more out there than meets the eye. And this, as beautiful as nature can seem to be, it could be deceptive and very dangerous. Many a times, you could walk down the woods and you get hit by a widowmaker, and that's trees that are broken hanging on trees above your head. As soon as you get a gust of wind, they drop on you like an axe. Survival temperatures, when sitting out there, I sat there one time and I thought I was supposed to, be at the right time at the right place. And unfortunately, my clock was dead. So I got in the woods 2 or 3 hours early, and I stood there and I got hypothermia, pretty much frostbite. I couldn't even get my keys out of my pocket. I sat there for too many hours in the dark waiting for daylight. And I seen all these smokestacks, and then come to find out it's deer in the field, but my gun froze. I froze. And then, I had to get out of there. I was getting sick. But, nature teaches us a lot. If you're really into nature and studying animals, you have to put your time in it. Anybody can go out there and gun ho and hunt deer, but you got to study the animal. You have to understand the whole thing about this animal's physiology, to the ecosystem, to the way they adapt in temperature changes. And my thing is this, as a human being, when we venture in these woods, our body's only used to a certain amount of degree of temperature, certain amount of degree of stress. These animals are huge. If they exist, how do they adapt to this? We know bears, semi-hibernate. What they really do is they go to sleep for a month or so, a week, a few weeks, and then they come out, get something to bite, to eat, or whatever, go back in. And they, to conserve energy, just like deer, they'll, build up all the fat before the winter time. That's how they were able to sustain themselves. How does an animal this big sustain themselves? Where do they go? So, there's a lot of answers to, what do we know much about them? I mean, you look at all these books. You can read every book you want. You can talk to every scientist you want. You can do everything you want. But the whole thing is, if you ain't out there hands-on, you don't know. Because you don't put the time in and get to understand. You start to realize that anybody could read a book, but when you got to go out there and actually test your skills and test your research and find the positive evidence, it's very hard, extremely hard. And sometimes you have to make a decision that, and I'll say this on national TV. Sometimes we'll find a track. Gary will pass it down to me. I'll check it out. Then everybody else gets a good look at it. And then we analyze like so many different ways for just one footprint. And till we come to a conclusion of what is and what's not. Is it actual squash track? But a lot of times it's, the tracks get distorted in all different ways. And sometimes people who go looking for tracks, they tend to touch it and destroy evidence. They tend to walk around it and not even like, look, okay, they found a track, but did you look at any breaks around the tree? Where did the tracks go? Did it go into a swamp? There's got to be other evidence, a line ahead of yourself other than the track. But then here's the thing. Does anybody ever backtrack? Go back and find out where this animal came from, where he was sleeping for that one night. I've studied game and I'll have to backtrack. And that's how I get to understand the knowledge of these animals and what's going on with them. Remember one thing, you can hunt a deer, you can hunt a bear, you can hunt a squatch. But every animal is an individual animal and they think differently. They have different strategies, different skills, different mindset. So just because you have experience on doing something, not necessarily because that individual animal will change your whole perspective about what it's all about. Because every time you think you got the answer, it proves you wrong, because things change, especially with the environment. If the environment, weather changes, or, you know, animals are being pressured by human presence, or there's a situation where, if you look at plants and there's a food shortage, one season earlier you had a great acorn drop last year, but this year it didn't grow because there wasn't enough rain, or it was a dry season. So my question is, what would they eat in such a situation of hard times like this? So researching is not just the track, it's the overall picture of everything in that environment. Everything from tree breaks to, you know, what is a tree break? You know, as an outdoor survivor, we break trees all the time. I leave different signs to tell you which direction I'm going or whatever. I believe that they have their own way of communicating the same way we do. And sometimes we can mistakenly look at a break or a tree or something and say, oh, that's a squatch. But it actually was somebody that was camping that likes to leave marks so they could find their way around. There's an example.
No. Yeah, and there's tons of examples. And one of the things that we don't ever think about is, first off, animals would have to evolve at all points in time. And what I mean by evolve is, like you say, depending on the life strategy it needs at that point in time. So when we're into the woods and things like that, if it's a bad winter, if it's not a bad winter, if, you know, there's a lot of storms, if there's they're constantly evolving. Unlike humans. Humans have a hard time evolving to a lot of things. Like a perfect example would be like, let's get rid of our cell phones. Dude, everybody would go crazy. You try to take a cell phone out of somebody's hand and be like, listen, you can't use this cell phone now for whatever. People are going to go crazy. Where animals, once again, they're evolving at all points in time with that. And Dean Harris, he brought up something that I agree with. I personally do believe that the Squatch will let you see it. It's on their terms for the most part. Now, obviously, we have all those things that, you know, they're mistakens, you know, they're crossing a road and things like that. But I always have questions when Bigfoot's cross roads, only because it's putting itself at danger then. So why is it taking that chance?
Exactly.
When, you know what I mean? So there's all these different questions. So my encounter story I'm actually going to share is my newest one. And I haven't really talked about it. And I haven't even really talked about it with a lot of the team. Here and there I do. And my buddy, Long Island Bigfoot, you'll appreciate this, Mike, because this is kind of what we kind of talk about in Project X. All right, so my encounter story, this is my second encounter. And once again, it was in suburbia. It was right outside the city, not actually that far from my house. Now, where my encounter took place was in a Pine Barrens, okay? So it's the most northern Pine Barrens inland, okay? So this is the area that I'm in, which, if we know Pine Barrens, it's glacier till from the sand. So what happens is the glacier hasn't receded. It's all glacier till. It's all sand. So right in the middle of New York State, we have sand, which is pretty cool, and it's great to train in and run in. But once again, it's cool because it's this different environment. Well, we also think, now the theory goes, is that these Pine Barren areas, if we go to New Jersey, the Pine Barrens, which I absolutely love the New Jersey Pine Barrens. It's so spooky down there. In other Pine Barrens, I know Mike has talked about Pine Barrens too. These are like energy areas. Like there's something very different about Pine Barren areas, that they just feel different. Now that could just be because your mind is, you know, because we're the kind of area that you're looking in, it's just a lot different than when we're deep in the forest, things like that. Well, long story short, was up in the woods one day just taking a walk and things like that, just kind of checking everything out. So I did some call blasting. Now the call blasting that I did that day was not your normal call blasting, all right? So this is for all you alien people and extraterrestrial people, and I can't believe I'm even talking about this stuff, but as you know, I'm a flesh and blood guy with Bigfoot. But I started doing CE5 calling. What CE5 is encounters of the fifth kind. Okay, so I got I had someone who sent me these special like tones, and what you do is you put these tones out into the environment, and supposedly these tones make, you're able to bring in UFOs and different crafts, because it does something to the environment that calls them in. Well, this person sent me a couple tones. I was doing some of these tones, and I was like, all right, did some call blasting. Then I kept walking. All right. So I got to this one area that like once again, it was really strange because as I was walking, there's just something like that told me to look up. All right, because I was once again, this is wintertime, so there's snow. I'm looking at all as Will will tell you, like we're always looking at tracks in the snow, like animal tracks, not Bigfoot tracks. I wasn't even going really to explore the possibility of Bigfoot. I was more doing paranormal type stuff. When I say paranormal type stuff, maybe trying to get some UFO stuff to happen with doing these CE5 calls, maybe trying to get some kind of paranormal activity to happen, maybe seeing like a shadow or something in the woods or just something different, not Bigfoot related. So once again, and yep, Sean Patterson, Mountain Ridges, we're going to get on that because this is kind of where this is going. So once again, I was just walking along and I was looking at everything on the ground, looking at all the tracks. Something told me as I came around this corner to look up, right? As I looked up, there was a Sasquatch up on a mountain ridge. So this was up on a ridge, but it wasn't a mountain. It was a high ridge, staring right at me, totally staring at me. I looked up and I stopped, dead in my tracks. I just stopped, and it put like I didn't know what I was looking at that point in time. I didn't know anything because my brain's going a million miles an hour, right? So I took my phone up, I put it up quick, and took a quick picture. But I know exactly what I was staring at, and I've never. My other encounter story I had, this was a lot more intense this past one because when I looked up, it was looking dead at me. When I took the picture, which I sent to you guys and I sent to Mike, it then turned around and was walking down the back of the ridge because it noticed that I noticed it. And the minute it saw that I noticed it, it turned and it tried to duck out. It was trying to like, yo, peace, I'm out. You didn't see me. So I couldn't get up to the top of that ridge though, because there was the snow and ice and everything there. I didn't have, crampons and shit like that to go climb the hill. But that was, I still have a hard time talking about it. I'm getting like kind of weird just talking about it. Because that kind of makes me think a couple things. All right. One, as a flesh and blood Bigfoot guy that believes it's a own biological species, that did by me playing the CE5 tones, is that the reason I saw the Bigfoot? So that is kind of sitting there like, is there some connection with that? Okay. Because what I have seen, I would still have that encounter story if I didn't do that. Okay. So the thing that I stay on is my first encounter. I know, like, even though I say like I don't 100% say I saw a Bigfoot, I saw a Bigfoot. The reason I say my first encounter story is because it was halfway behind a tree. All right. So I was looking at it through a night vision binocular, and then I thought it was a raccoon or a possum climbing a tree. Because once again, I'm like, this is super cool. I see an animal climb a tree. But when it blinked at me, then it got real quick. And I'm like, that is not a raccoon or a possum. And then it slowly turned and walked to the left. And as it walked, I could see it walking through the woods. But it was so dead quiet in November. Like I saw this in November. The leaf litter is everywhere, but you couldn't hear it. This second encounter, though, it rattled me a lot more. Only because when I say locked eyes, I was staring at it and it was staring at me. Now I didn't lock eyes, obviously, because it was still far away, but I could see it clear as day. So then when I took that picture, that's when it, like, once it noticed that I saw it, it dipped out the backside of the ridge. Here's the weird thing that day also that, I kind of talk about. The day that I went into the woods, there was forest rangers in the woods. Now, in the area that I'm in, and I've been to this spot, a bunch of times. There's never any forest ranger at all, like no forest rangers. So could that be related also? I don't know, but I put that into the data bank of possible possibilities. Okay. Now, I do agree in the fact that whatever it was, as far as that caused that encounter to happen, that it did allow me to see it. Because once it's noticed that I saw it, it just kind of took off. But if I didn't look up, I would have never seen it, you know? So it's like that inner side, you know what I mean? Like we have our spidey senses, like your sixth sense. Once again, it's just like my intuition kicked in. Just something told me to look up, and sure enough, I did, and that was there. It was. So yeah, that's my newest encounter, and I'm still kind of. I'm not gonna lie, I'm still nervous telling it. I'm actually nervous right now, kind of talking about it, because I still haven't grasped the whole concept of it. Now, is that because it's on it? How do I want to put it? It fringes on my belief system, if you understand what I'm saying, because you know, doing NYBS Project X has opened my eyes to the possibilities of different phenomena within the Bigfoot community. Project X is a project that we're doing that looks at Bigfoot phenomena from all sides. Will and I kind of stay on the biological specimen side. Okay, so that's kind of we want to see what we want to see. Okay, like we understand that there's factual, maybe because we're woods people, we have that understanding.
Yeah.
But we're also both very open to the possibility of, could it be a spiritual thing, a paranormal thing, an extraterrestrial thing, things like that. As researchers, we have to look at all the things, okay? Not just what we personally believe, because we could be absolutely wrong in our thought process, even though we do have our belief. So I think why I have such a problem with this encounter personally on a personal level is it tugs at the strings of, I know what I did that day. Okay. And Mike, I mean, here we go. And our buddy, Mike Patrick, you know, I had Google CE5 tones. It's very interesting stuff. CE5 tones is you know, Dr. Greer stuff. When you're trying to call in, you know, in Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, where it's kind of like a mental telepathy thing, where we're able to call these things and they meditate and things like that. It's a whole different thing. It really is. And once again, I was doing these tones in the environment just to see what response I would have, and not for Bigfoot. I didn't do this for Bigfoot, but I ended up seeing a Bigfoot. And this Bigfoot that I did see, I 100% know what I saw. Unlike the other one, even though I know what I saw, it's still because I thought it was a raccoon or something else. I kind of just put it off as it was there, but it walked away. So I'm kind of like, that's why, you know, my boy Long Island Mike, this is the stuff that I'm like, you know what? I mean, I know what I did that day. I did paranormal stuff that day. So, and then I saw a Bigfoot. So is there a connection? Is it all coincidence? Did it allow me to see it that day for that reason?
Right.
You know, I have to go by what the data states and what the facts of the data are. And I'm a data person. The facts state that I did those things. I did the tones. The facts are something inside me told me to look up, and the facts are I knew what I was staring at. And then when I noticed it and took that quick picture, even though the picture is a grainy, crappy picture as always, that it's noticed that I saw it, and it went down the bridge. That's, once again, is the facts. Okay, so if we want to talk facts, those are the facts of the story. Other than that, the rest is speculation. I can speculate all I want. But that was my newest encounter story, and that happened in January. So, and they talked about it. I think the woman talked about it in the New York Times thing I did recently, the article, New York Post article. But so, Will, so what got you into now the Bigfoot phenomena? So we kind of told some personal stories, and I'm kind of still kind of shaking up on mine. So what got you into it?
I think being that it was a personal thing for myself, you know, sometimes I question my state of mind and my mentality because was I'm going crazy for what I saw. You know, it's just something that always eats at me for years, years. And I thought about it, but, you know, I kind of like blew it off. But I wanted to find out more answers, you know. And then being an outdoorsman, I see how wildlife reacts in different situations with people, you know. It kind of make me try to puzzle out, if this thing exists, why does it do this and why does it do that? You know, I think a lot of times when people encounter a Bigfoot, a lot of times it's by mistake. And a lot of times it could be out of a glance because you're walking and you turn your head at just at the right time and you spot it. Um, One of the things I've noticed though with a lot of reports and people is that when they spot a Bigfoot, it's either on higher ground above looking down at you, or it's from behind you, or it might be on another side of a creek bed, but whatever it is, it always seems to be on a higher range. And why is that? Well, first of all, I don't think a Bigfoot or even animals don't want to come head on with you on an open road. There's no way they want this out of yourself, and eventually the curiosity of that animal will come to seek you out. Sometimes it could be from your cooking on your campsite. Sometimes it could be you went out for a walk, you left the stuff at the campsite. Now he knows you're gone. He wants to check out what's your belongings or what you have. He wants to investigate what the hell are you. As curious as you are and as fascinated as that you are of them, they are the same as you. Remember one thing: they're 10 times smarter than you. Anything that can be that big or even small and be that elusive and survive this long. You're talking about wilderness Bigfoot compared to urban Bigfoot, and then you find Bigfoot in Long Island, Staten Island, certain pockets. You say to me, "There's no way a Bigfoot's going to be there." Of course there is. There's deer, there's other animals, and it might be a different subspecies of what is the same as the urban Bigfoot or the one mountain type Bigfoot. They just like we are, and different races of people with different cultures. I'm sure they branch out the same way. The difference with them is that they are more. I can't say animal because they're more of a humanoid type, I would assume, but they have a lot of animal instincts and have a lot of senses and a lot of abilities that more than we have. They can smell further, they can hear for a longer distance. Their vocalization is probably 10 times more than ours. They enhance what they call their inner senses, where we as human beings don't. We have a sixth sense, but barely we ever use it. Look at a camper that goes out in the field. He's just bouncing around, making noise, doing his thing. He doesn't even pay attention to the environment half the time because he's too busy having fun. But sometimes my girl will say when we're walking down the woods, "Why do you stop and pause? And you turn your head left and right, and then when you feel there's something not right, you always drop to the ground." I say because when I drop to the ground, I want them to stand up and say, "Where the hell did he go?" And make that mistake to peek up and look towards me so I can catch it. Sometimes just by glancing around and stopping, you take a picture, a photo in your head of that whole area, and then all of a sudden you see something that's out of place. Like I could pick out a deer's ear or a leg in a thick brush pile and other stuff. These are things that I've acquired during my outdoor skills. So this is something that you got to think about. Um, there's a lot of different methods. When we're talking about field research, it's not just finding a track, it's studying all different stuff. But you got to look at the overall picture of what happens in the forest. Look at the foliage, look at the branches, look for hair samples, look for tree breaks, look for scratches in a tree, look for different things. But what are the answers? Do squatches climb trees? Do squatches do they backtrack, and do they always go back to where they usually come from, or are they just migrating through anywhere, walking miles? We don't know. These are some of the answers that we have to try to figure out. And there's a lot, like I said, there's so much things to talk about. But we have to look at the overall picture, not just for the squatch, but how we react to our environment, the mistakes we make, and figure out how they cope with dealing with us, human beings around in pressured areas. People say, "Oh, they're not going to be around houses and people." To me, I say that's BS. Why? Because as a hunter, you'll laugh if I tell you that some of the biggest monster-sized animals that I've harvested come right behind people's houses, department stores, and local areas. Just when you think there is no life existing in those little pockets, they're there. Why do these animals choose to live so close to the proximity of man? Because they know that we are a creature of habit. They know how far they can get around us, and they understand how closely they can live next to us and not be detected. So if these animals can do that, why couldn't a squatch do? So we got to look at the overall picture of what we're looking at. Um, there's guys with millions of dollars of technology and equipment and stuff like that. But your behavior and the way you handle yourself in the field is going to dictate everything. First of all, they have a couple of senses, sight, sound, and smell. So you have to elude them in the sense that you have to cover your own body, or how you walking. Are you going upwind, downwind? from your environment. Maybe the reason they came and looked at you from upper ridge is because you got an upright draft that's coming in your face, and it went up the ridge, and they caught that scent, and then they hear you, or they already know, because as soon as you walk into their territory, they singled you out, and they're going to check you out, and they're going to stay far back. You're not going to see them. You won't even know there's anything. It's the same thing like deer, same thing like bear, or any kind of critter, or even a mountain lion. They're so stealthy, you wouldn't even know. They could be right behind you, and you won't even have no clue. But you have to try to educate yourself about what's around your environment and how you're going to react to it, because 99% of the time, your emotions and the way you deal with nature and how you present it is going to give you the actual answers of what you need to know, or what you need to see, or how you're going to deal with it. Okay, what happens if I'm walking and I walk right up on one for the first time head on? Is it going to be a fight or flight situation? I think that what I'm going to actually do is to relax, take a deep breath, and maybe try to form some kind of communication and watch it. I'm not going to let it get past my eyes, but I'm going to watch his body gesture and how he does. Same thing like a bear. I had a bear walk up right up on me, and I had to pay attention to his body posture and whether he's going to be aggressive, whether it was being territorial, or whether he was just checking me out of curiosity. So you're talking about something that's 10 feet, 600 pounds, or it could be 5 feet, or it could be smaller. How are you going to react if you see one? I don't know, because I haven't encountered one yet right off the back like that in that situation. But yes, I saw one. Yeah, when I was a teenager. But so that always in the back of my head. So my thing is, I track a lot of game and I study wildlife. If I can find one animal out of a dozen animals and hunt that one animal, why can I put my skills to the test and try it on trying to find evidence of a Bigfoot? I'm not crazy, and I'm not, looking to become no movie star. I don't even care about none of that. But if we can find evidence, wouldn't it be great to know? But you also have, like Gary says, you have to be open-minded. An old man, you can learn from an old man, you can learn from a 2-year-old kid. You just got to be open-minded to understand things, and, pay attention to what's going on and listen to other people's evaluations of it, and then come to a conclusion within yourself. Like I said, we really study things really carefully because we don't want to make mistakes. We don't want to look foolish, but we want the right answers. So how we conduct ourselves in the field is very, very important. The equipment you use is very important. How you use your equipment is very important. You just can't put a trail cam out there. Do you know, like, your hands have so much sense in your hands? Your dead skin goes on a camera. You don't think they can smell that? Of course they can, because if every other game could, so can they. How you place your strategy on, how you set up your positioning on your equipment or your skills or whatever, it's going to determine something. Because when it's something that they can't figure out, they're going to make the mistake. Let them come to you. They'll go to them. And this is why, like I say, Gary, sometimes you'll have an encounter or something because they're checking you out. They know there's something different about you, and they're studying you. Same thing they do with a lot of people. But the problem with people is some people are just normal citizens. They get panicky. Oh my God, I saw one, and they write 911 and they freaking out. Then they bring everybody to the woods looking for this thing, and now they just blew it. They had a chance, an opportunity of seeing something very special and possibly making some kind of communications. Or sometimes you could just sit on a stump and whistle slowly, or even sing something smooth, and let the animal or whatever's out there know that you're not danger. You're just trying to relax in that environment and to fit in. I told Gary the story about the sweatshirt and how I got a bear to get so used to me to the point where he accepted me within his social status of his territory without coming after me. This is the same thing with people. Sometimes they'll come to you. I believe that if you have that aura in yourself and the ability to respect and sense of non-danger to them, they will come to you. So most game do. So why wouldn't they do? What do you think, Gary?
Well, everything you said is absolutely amazing as always. I'm going to do some questions real quick because I'm going to answer some of these. Michael asked about, infrared photography and infrared cameras and video cameras. And, I'm a very tech savvy person. Because I also do own a paranormal business. I have all that stuff, that we use: thermal cameras, IR cameras, full spectrum cameras. Now, I don't really, when we get into trail cameras and we get into things, and I'm going to kind of piggyback off of what you just said, though. Is something that you said, that, you know, we leave our skin cells and everything on these other cameras, and which I totally do agree, because that's a fact. I mean, we all know that, and don't mind me because I'm doing chat as well. But you know, that is a fact. But let's even go one step. All right, let's just go one step further. The minute we put 1 foot in the woods, they already know we're there. Anything knows we're there. Like we can put deer piss all over us. We can sit there and wear the clothes and the EMF clothes they have now, the magnetic. We have everything. No matter how good we are, the minute we put 1 foot in the woods, something's gonna know that we're there. We can do our best. So let's kind of just understand that concept. And then like Will says, we have to be proactive. Double backing, doing all these type of things, trying to outthink. That's what we're doing, is trying to outthink a Squatch in their own environment. You know, I believe that we're Bigfoot's entertainment. You'll hear me talk about that all the time. Why do you think they come into camps? Why do you think that you start hearing tree knocks side to side? Why do you think that rocks will start coming in? I don't think rock throwing is a bad thing. I think what they're trying to do is square off to be like, what are you going to do? I'm going to throw a rock at you. How are you going to react? It's cause and effect. Humans are the same way. I can sit there and, and if I'm sit there and start talking to somebody and I can say like a smart ass comment on purpose, I want to see how you're going to react to that. If I'm in a good mood and say something positive, I want to see how you react to that. So when a Bigfoot throws a rock at you, I don't think it's so much like they're saying, get the hell out of here. I think it's, once again, it's like, well, what are you going to do? Because there's been plenty of times I've had rocks thrown at me, all right, and I don't move. And guess what happens when I don't move? It all stops. It all stops. Because people get scared. I mean, let's be real. When things are being thrown at you in the woods, that's scary. As you know, I'm out in the woods at 11 o'clock at night, 2 in the morning. It's pitch black. To go back to the infrared cameras, we're using IR cameras to look through. We're looking through night vision. We're looking through all this stuff, okay? Now, when people say, like, can animals see the infrared? Okay, let's go into that. I mean, I think they can only in the fact of this, and I'm going to try to use it as a human reference, all right? If I'm out in the woods, right, and I see someone with an IR camera pointing it at me, I'm going to see that person. I'm going to see them. The IR lights glow, all right? The red glow, you can still see it. I'm going to see the back screen on the person, okay? Even if you cover that back screen, I'm still going to know you're standing there because I already know that you're in the woods. I may not know the exact spot you're at, but we have to then assume that a Bigfoot, if they are nocturnal creatures, because I see them in day and night. So, I mean, once again, we don't know if they are, how their vision would be at night, but we would have to kind of accept that they're able to see at night pretty good. Okay.
Right.
So if we do just put that in face, it would make sense why these cameras don't work. Okay. Then we get to game cameras. The thing about game cameras, in my opinion, isn't so much that they're looking at the infrared no glow. I mean, these cameras have no glow now. So, I mean, when they take a picture, you don't even know that it's taking a picture. I mean, the technology in these game cameras is amazing, okay? And I've tested game cameras. I've taken EMF readings off of game cameras. I've taken frequency readings off of game cameras. And when they snap a picture, it doesn't come out far enough to even make any remote difference. It's less than half a foot. So that less than half a foot distance, that when a camera goes off, it's not going to make a difference to a Bigfoot that's about, we'll say like 30, 40 feet, 50 feet away, because these game cameras take far pictures. Like now the distance. So we can cancel that out. I think it goes back to kind of what Will was talking about and kind of how I said, the minute you put your foot in the woods, they know you're there. We're on a tree, or like we do, I bury trail cameras, okay? Dean, they do make a frequency, but they don't. We've measured it because I have the frequency meters to measure it. When they give off a picture, it's not giving off a frequency. It's not doing it. This has been tested. So this is something that has been said in the Bigfoot community and now has been taken as gold. So half a
Yeah,
foot.
and I agree. When we look at other wildlife, many marsupials and animals that are nocturnal, they have the ability to see in the dark, just like night vision. Um, in the daytime, what a lot of deer and other animals see is like black and white. Everything is like gray with shades of black and white. They're fine, but just you ever wonder how does an animal like a deer with a big rack of horns come running through the woods in the thick stuff, 90 miles an hour at dark, and
Mhm.
how were they able to see and find their way around without getting tangled up? So I think every animal has some kind of night vision ability, or infrared, or they can actually illuminate their pupils to the point where the area looks like it's daylight, but it's actually nighttime, but everything looks bright in contrast. Even a full moon helps them a lot
Well, full moon
with
would
that.
help. Yeah, with that would
Yeah.
help all
And that
animals.
also changes their behavior as well because of the breeding mode, the change of tides. That has a lot to do. That affects nature a lot,
Yep.
especially with that. Um,
But
then
when
you
we get
talk
to,
about,
go
go ahead.
ahead. We're doing we'll go to trail cameras though. You know, we're talking
The thing
about
with
the
the
trail
trail
cameras.
cameras, I've noticed that I don't know how many guys out there ever noticed that when you go home and you look in your trail camera, there was photos taken, but it's nothing in front of the camera. You ever
Correct.
wonder why that is? You can't
Yep.
explain. Sometimes I believe, when you talk about the phenomenon of the orb, it can
Hmm.
be an orb just swaying by and it triggers the motion sensors of the cameras. Could be that something is near the camera but not fully in front of the camera, and it detects the vibration of the body heat or even sound that might trigger a camera, and we don't know about. You, Gary, and we discussed this once before, and even we both came with this almost close to the similar conclusion that we wonder about echolocation at night. Do they bark sounds in the area? They know there's certain things around, or to detect stuff. It's like bats do with sonar and echolocation and stuff like that. But when you listen to these videos of the squatches screaming in a mountain top, why are they screaming? Is a sign for us to say, hey, you humans, we're up here. Stay where
Yeah.
you're at. Don't get too close. Leave us alone. Or is it, hey, my brothers and sisters out there, we got a bunch of clowns at a campsite. Let's go check them out. Be careful. Dangers are present, in the area. Or is it a form of communication to you to let you know that what you're looking for, he's there. I'm here. I'll look for you, or you'll look for me. Just be alert. It's like giving you a heads up that, like you call on your cell phone, you call your girlfriend, your boyfriend, or whatever it may be, or you go out there, some form of communication. Well, they have to have the same form of communication. Then we
Yeah.
discussed about smell. Why do they smell so bad? Well, when you look at deer and bear, they tend to piss on their own legs and their hocks, and their legs and their feet also have scent glands. So when we walk in the area and it stinks like a skunk ape or something really bad that we say we've never smelt before, is it just their sign of communication where they leave an area, a sign that, like, in other words, if you look at a deer, he'll walk around and then he'll always find his way back to his track. You know why? Because between his toes, there's the little glands in there that leave
Yeah.
scent on the
Plants.
ground, so he follows his own scent back.
Yep.
So think about a squatch. If he's traveling or he has to run, every time he brushes on something, maybe there's a scent communication trail. You
Well,
know,
there would have to be. There would have to be because animals, the ones we talked about, like the ones that stink, they more than likely would. You said about the urine thing, but they also may have a glandular thing, like just like people. Some people sweat more than others. Some people smell differently than others. Animals are the
yes,
same. Look at ferrets. Look at skunks. We descent ferrets to have them as pets. So maybe some of these squatches, and then if you go to the southern, look in the skunk ape and things like that. Once again, it's a lot hotter down there. You're in the swampy areas down there. Up in upstate New York, though, we don't really have those same type of climates. So,
right.
so we don't hear about the smelly squatches so much up here. With
I was coming to think about that because you don't. Mostly it's like in in the swamps of
southern,
Alabama, Kentucky, or
mhm,
somewhere deep in area where there's 90-degree weather infested with
yeah,
mosquitoes. They tend to smell more than I guess down in northern. We're colder up here, up in the mountains. It's all
exactly.
way
So
different.
Yeah, and you would know that. But to kind of go back to the trail cameras, the reason, the kind of what Dean, like, the reason I believe that they know trail cameras are there isn't because of frequency, isn't because of infrared, isn't because of any of that. We bury trail cameras in the ground. I bury them. But once again, and I have special things that I put these in that actually match the environment. So a normal person wouldn't even know that they're there. But like I said, I was in the woods. They smell me. They knew I was right there, and that's why we're bringing this up with the scent glands. Regardless of the situation, how much you try to cover your tracks as a human, like you say, you're in their backyard, you're in their living room. They know that you were there.
Exactly.
My footprints are there. Everything's there. I've disturbed the leaves. Just like we try to look for their prints and disturbing the leaf litter, disturbing the ground. I've now disturbed the ground. They would then be like you said, yes, they're watching you. They know that you're there. They're seeing what you're doing. And then they know to stay away from that area. They go around that area, The other thing, if some of these cheaper trail cameras, they are a little bit loud. Some of the cheaper ones click. So if they were hearing a random click in the woods, then that would also make sense that, with the cheaper trail camera, then that makes complete sense that they would know that that's there. But these nice expensive ones like we use, you don't even know that thing's there because it's dead silent. But they do know that it's there because, like you say, they've watched us put it up. And if they didn't watch us put it up, they could smell us a mile away. When I'm in the woods, I'm not putting my finger up in the air seeing where's the wind direction coming from. Am I upwind? Am I downwind? Am I doing all these different things? No, because at that point in time, I'm setting up the woods for the best case scenario. When I'm into the woods, I'm setting it up as if there's not a Bigfoot there at that point in time. Now, if I'm trying to draw one in, that's a little bit different. So I go a whole different way around that. But if I'm not trying to draw one in and I'm just out there setting it up, I'm trying this to be like an everyday person in the woods. Once again, Bigfoots watch people. I believe they have 3 territories. All right. They have their home territory. Okay. Then they have their roaming territory. The roaming territory would be like us going to the grocery store, going to the work, going to the bank. It's once again right around their main territory. Then they have an outskirt territory where once again, it's like us going on a small trip. So if I have to go ice fishing, if I'm going to the lake, or if, you're going hunting or whatever, even though you could probably hunt in your backyard, but once again, it's our outside territory where they go, that they kind of roll in, but then they come back through. Okay. Yeah. So it's like a 3-tier situation. And that's what I kind of find. And the reason I believe that is I go by the track patterns. The track patterns that we find in one of my areas tends to go that. And then I take the sighting reports and match them up with the sighting reports. It makes logical sense. Okay. So when we do those kind of patterns, you then can kind of have an understanding of that. But trail cameras, IR cameras are a great tool. But, the reason that I think that we don't get anything on them is because, A, they know we're there taking the picture. They just know we can't hide. Trail cameras, once again, we can hide them, but we disturb the woods enough to then let them know that there was a human there. We're leaving scent. A lot of us wear, our clothes have fabric softener in them. We can do everything we can do, but still, what's on the bottom of our shoe? Our shoes could smell. We could be tracking something through the woods, So
that's one of the things I want to emphasize on that is that how you approach your entry and exit and from where your research area or where you're studying is very, very critical and very important, and you have to be just as stealthy, because what I used to do with my hunting areas, if I hunt a bottleneck or a swamp area, I would go in the middle of the summer and I would prune all the little trees and all the briars and I make a little tiny pathway where I would literally crawl in between some areas of the swamp just to get through without making any rustle, because I didn't want to alarm any of the game that's in the area, especially when I'm trying to harvest something really, really nice. I'll put in my time in. So I don't even touch the branches with my hands. I would just go with a snip and clear out the area weeks on end. I would have to hang my clothes out in the outside for days, up to a week or
Mhm.
two, just so they get the scent. And then sometimes I take the dirt and bury my and put it in my clothes in a bag and let the dirt cinch in. Is now I covered a lot of the odor. I try to eliminate any possibility of my existence as much as I possibly can. It's never going to be 100%,
Mhm.
but you have to try different things. Even when you're outdoors, like if I use an instance when I had 14 guys that called me and said, "Hey, well, we're gonna make a deer drive. We're gonna push this part of the area and up into another area, and we're gonna whatever comes out, we'll shoot it." I says, "Okay, I'll go." So as they formed a long line, I decided, "Go ahead, guys, you go first." They says,
Yeah.
"Yeah, but you're not gonna get anything. We got sitters out there, and then if you walk point left or right, you have a good chance." I says, "Nah, you guys go." And they says, "Why?" I says, "I know what I'm doing. You guys go." And what happens is here's these all these guys walking through the woods like a bunch of retards, and then sooner or later, someone is trying to avoid the briars, thick areas. Someone makes a gap. Do you know that I've harvested more deer right behind them as they were going through because the deer was running, then all of a sudden lay right down, and here all these guys walk right past. So the intelligence factor on this animal to literally drop, knowing that there's no way to get past a whole line of guys, but literally to lay down. And I watched with my own eyes as I walk catwalk nice, and instead of walking straight behind them, I zigzag left and right, slowly, slowly forward, slope, stop, slowly forward, stop. And sure enough, I watch a buck lay right down, and I watch three guys walk no matter less than 20 feet from that deer. And that
Mhm.
deer lay down, had his head down like this, and they walk right past them. So think about a squatch. If they do exist, they're gonna do any means necessary to elude you.
Mhm.
So you can walk right by a blowdown and they'll lay right there on their stomach or on their back and watch you. You don't know. You know,
No, they're
you're
always going to
just
go to the high
in their
ground, and that's the
territory.
thing is
You're in their
people.
territory. The only
Yeah.
way you're gonna get close to them is what we call an acceptance. It's like what I told Gary a story how I used to wear a sweatshirt for a week and then hang it on a tree and then it gets torn up and then as weeks go by, boom, eventually it stops getting ripped. And then the bear that was letting me know, hey, this is my territory. I'm the boss in this area. Keep away. He finally accepted that I was no threat. And then when I did had
Mhm.
to go do research and try to study this animal, I was able to get within 20 to 25 yards from this animal and watch him and literally film him and record him and study him and see. I didn't harvest him. I just was so fascinated trying to see. My thing is, can I find something out there? Can I pinpoint and use my wits and skills as much as necessary? But sometimes as much as I do, I still make a lot of mistakes. But I learned from that and I log down everything I did and I try to figure out how did I get to this point? And then they all got spooked when the wind was in my direction and I went to this way. Changing my point of entry sometimes is necessary. Um, Sometimes the timing of how to get in there during the weather. I guess maybe if I went on a rainy day, they would get less sound from me because of the moisture and the rain pounding on the ground. That would literally block my sound as I going through. So I had to weather the storm and sit in pouring rain just to get to where I had to get to without spooking game. What about in the wintertime? Did I actually wear a white suit? Yes, I did. I went into the store, bought a white painter suit, put it on, and covered my body, and then got to an area on and moved up the snow, and then actually laid in there and made like an almost like an igloo with a blind with a little opening, and sit there and wait, and I can just watch them come through. But you had to sit there all day. Believe me, I was freezing. But research brings us to so many different boundaries to what we can and cannot do. But we have to. If you have all the equipment and technology, bring it. Remember one thing, it's how you use it and the right timing. Even with calls, Gary emphasized this once before with the coyote calls, and then it'll bring one in thinking that there's a dead kill. And, a Bigfoot has to be part scavenger too, because he doesn't want to conserve too much energy, especially during the winter. If he can find an easy meal, he will be right on it quick. So the calls, everybody has animal calls, but to master the call at the right sequence at the right time, especially even breeding calls. You can't just go out there and put doe in heat scent or an animal in heat scent if the females are not of an estrus within that week or that month. Remember, every clan and every herd of animals, their cycle system is different. Maybe the younger does come in late, they come in heat, and the older does come in heat first. So when do they come in heat? But believe it or not, the majority of the time when these animals come in season, it's based on temperature changes. So if the temperature dropped to so cold, that will dictate the activity of that animal, whether it's breeding mode, whether it's finding food mode, or whether they have to get on the move because they'll freeze to death. Sometimes they just got to walk around because that's the way to keep warm. Um, how they do. So when we think about an animal like a squatch, we have to look at every possibility that we learn from nature and learn from animals to see how can we use it to capitalize in our research and our studies. You know, we have to log and log every little information, even if it's the most silliest thing to think about. Every little piece of information is very important. That's why even in Project X, once we go out there, we're all fun and games. But sometimes when we hang out at dinner time or maybe by a campfire, but when we're out in that field, I have to focus on what I need to do, and I need to find some evidence. We need to scan and depart a little ways from each other as we're searching within radio contact, within range, and we have to log everything. And when the information is found and evidence is found, the team leader Gary gets in there. We analyze it. We decide. Everybody takes notes in all different directions. We put it all together. Hand him the book. Then we'll sit down at campfire and we'll come to a conclusion of what was and what was not. And then we'll see if this is positive evidence that we could bring out to the public. And this is very important. So this is not just I'm in BF or Bigfoot TV, woo woo, screaming like and banging on the trees all the time. No, we're not idiots. We really need to get close to these things. We need to go and find out. We're going into their lair. The wilderness is their home. We need to find out how far deep do they live in the interior, or they living in the exterior, which is closer to the proximity of man, or right in your own backyard, which is almost most of the time when you least suspect it. How many times have people walked in the yard, the bird feeders were down, but there was no tracks, or there was no bear tracks? Who took the bird feeders down? I believe Bigfoot likes to hit bird feeders once in a while because it's a source of food, protein, and something easy for them, especially if somebody got hummingbird stuff. They could drink the sugar water because they probably love that.
Well, they're scavengers.
Where we see stories of people gifting and something has taken the gift. And people have put the gifting at 6 feet, 7 feet, 8 feet, and still disappeared. And then the next day they find something back in return. So was that an appreciation thing? You give me a gift, I give you something back in return. We have to take notice to that. Now, my friend Mike from Long Island, he's an ace in spotting dark objects and bodies in trees or little, whether it's cryptid or whether it's Bigfoot. He has a way of I sent him a photo of my friend with a red fox to show how big it was, and he found something on the tree. Now, I contacted my friend to walk to the back of that tree and tell me, is that chaga on the tree? Now, what is chaga? Is a fungus that grows and makes the tree look like a big black knot. No. He went there was no chaga on that tree. He took another picture, which he's going to send me, of that tree, and there was nothing on it. So what Mike found was something, whether it's a bear or whether it was something. There was something on that tree. But, when we look at these pictures when people send us with little images, we try to analyze that as well, because they are stumps, they are chaga, they are sometimes twisted trees because they bend and twist. Sometimes you'll find bends in the woods. People say, oh, a squatch bended, but no, it bends because of the sunlight. Changes of trees. If you plant a tree and you got light on one side, it's going to bend to that side. That's just a normal thing. Sometimes a winter ice storm, all the trees canopy, they bend down, and then they don't recover. They stay bent down. So what is and what is not? We look at a track in the snow, something as big, as deep as, and all of a sudden they send us a picture. The track is 10 times the size, and it was a small track, but we can't distinguish because no one took the measurement. So what do you think, Gary?
I mean, once again, we're on the same page because I agree with everything you say. I mean, I'm not a big proponent of tree bends anymore. I used to be, but not anymore because the freeze thaw in New York alone, the snow bend, the snow load is insane. I can bring you into the woods and show you 100 saplings that are all bent, and people would think, "Oh my God, Gary, that's a tree bend." It's not. It's freeze thaw snow load. So I mean, it is what it is at this point.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I mean, that's kind of where we're at. All right. So Mike actually brought up one thing, and then we're going to end the show because we're done here. But Mike brought up something, and I just thought about it. And now I'm going to go paranormal, or I'm going to go Project X a little bit, since you brought up some Project X stuff. Mike says, leave a gift with a game camera. It's about intent and respect, in my opinion. So he brought that up. Now, I'm going to go outside the box of thinking. Let's go back to trail cameras, okay? Let's go back to Bigfoot's watch us, right? So this is the thing. Bigfoot's watch us. We're their entertainment. They want to see what we're doing, okay? What if, this is a big what if. What if the reason we don't get Bigfoots on trail cameras is because we have to be there for it to happen?
It's a possibility.
What I'm saying is not because we put the camera up. What I'm saying is, if it's possible that these creatures or whatever, they're only around when we're around. So if we don't go into the woods, they're not there really. But when we're in the woods and they're watching us as I mean, the Native Americans used to call them guardians of the forest, guardians of the woods. I mean, that's what the Iroquois would talk about. So if these things are forest people and they're the guardians of the woods, what's the possibility? Now we're kind of going, we're getting off the flesh and blood side a little bit, but it could still be a flesh and blood thing, but more to it, more tangible from different aspects. What if the reason we're not getting trail cam pictures is because it's only there when we're there?
It's a possibility. You know, sometimes, even Mike discussed this with me, you know, sometimes the best shot you're going to get or a glimpse of one is because they're right behind you. So that's why a lot of times when people put video cameras in front of their face and they're sitting in the woods and they're talking or singing or something, people can tend to get a glimpse of something behind them. They know what your intentions are. In the phenomenal side, I guess you would say, can they mind speak? Do they understand what we say? Do they understand English? Can they read our minds? Because they have a lot of senses. You know, an animal has that sense to trigger any reaction that he could do when he feels something is not right. So why do we get more photos when we're at presence, and we get more photos of Sasquatch when we're there? It's because they're there when we're there. They're checking us out. Reason we don't get it on the trail cam is because there's no activity of ourselves near that trail cam. So that's a possibility why we don't. And another thing too, and I want to bring out, and I forgot to mention this before, but a lot of times when you walk on a wood road and you walk in the area, not only you're leaving scent, but you're leaving sound, and you're leaving your presence as you're going through it. Every animal that's in that woods is going to avoid that particular walkway that you're doing. So if you're walking down a pathway, they're not going to walk that same pathway. They're always going to horseshoe around you or come from a different direction. So if a Sasquatch sees you walking, he stops and he sees you putting something on a tree and then going to another one doing something, and then he's analyzing you from a distance. So he's going to avoid that particular route that you have taken. He's going to be right next to you, but he's going to take his route of approach, which is going to be circulation around you or going up high and watching you from a distance downhill. Or he can be right underneath you, laying on the ground, watching you from a distance walking, but he's not going to come on the same footstep in the same area you're walking. So maybe they understand why these trail cams, they see you putting a box on a tree. They see you touching that tree. They want to avoid that tree because something's not right. Why would you go there? You know, it's the same thing. If you've seen something dangerous that you don't know, would you go there? Would you put your hands in a box or on a tree or something? If some crazy psycho did something, if there was a bag left in the woods, are you going to open it? No. So think about them in that same situation. The intelligence factor of Sasquatch is still unknown. And I think that when you look at the overall picture between what people study from the flesh and blood to the cryptozoology with legends and folklores to, you know, is there a difference between aliens and them or whatever? We will never know, but we do need each other to help each other open up a bigger picture of understanding. It's not to say that this guy's wrong and that guy's wrong. I'm just as wrong as every one of them. Why? Because I don't have the answer. I'm searching for the answer.
We're all the same.
But if we could sit down and create a blueprint and see if there's any pattern changes, that we could pick up details. There was another guy that showed a picture of his whole topo map on it. He did a great thing. He's marking all the sightings and all the reports. So you kind of get like a pattern of what's going on, but you're still going to have to be in the field yourself to actually get in front of that animal and be at the right time when that animal makes that decision to take that north route up that slope at point A or point B. And you're going to have to be there to intercept him without that animal realizing you're there in order to see you. I think the majority of the sightings of Bigfoot might be accidental. Sometimes just simply walking through the woods, the right place at the right time, bang, you see each other, and bang, it's gone, it's over. And then when you try to look for it, you'll never see it until it comes to you. So it's kind of, we don't have the answers. So this is why research is so important. We got to get out there and find out what is going on and how we're going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. These are the things that we have to talk about and brainstorm and things like that, you know. All right, Will, we are done,
right.
and that was a good show. That was so much information.
Thank you guys for being on.
We got a little bit off topic, but no, it's, you know what, it's great because we have so much to talk about, so many things, and you know, like I say, hopefully we'll come back with some more stuff to talk about as far as like what we're finding.
Yes,
so that's
more work ahead of ourselves, you know, and Project X, we're going to come and hopefully we'll bring you guys some more information and data and some actual evidence on our expeditions. But stay tuned. You know, it's not over. There's still too many questions. We're learning every day. Thank you for being on the show, and I'm glad to be here, part of this.
Oh, no, I mean, we're grateful to have you as part of the team, and as always, we appreciate everything that you do and the time and effort. You know, Footation. So what we can get out of this today, as always, is this. You know, we already know that the Bigfoot has abilities that we no longer have that may look paranormal to us, but are normal to that creature. You know, we just look at things a lot differently. It doesn't mean that, you know, we're going to have all these answers. Maybe that you say we don't get these pictures on trail cam boxes because we're not there. We need to be there in that area. And like Will said, you put a box or a bag in the woods. Maybe is these things going to go check it out? Maybe they won't. You know what I mean? Maybe they're smart enough to stay away. Maybe that's why we haven't found them. Do they make mistakes? Maybe they do. What I can say is this. I do believe that there's going to be behavioral changes coming into 2021, 2022, and 2023. Why do I say that? Pandemic. Everybody is in the woods. People that have never been in the woods, they're in the woods, right? So we're now going to see pattern changes within the Bigfoots themselves because we have, yes, we'll get sightings, but once again, you got to remember, they may not be so used to seeing all these hikers, all these campers, all these bushcrafters. Bushcrafting is a huge thing now. And none of these people really did this before. With pandemic, a lot of people have picked up a lot of hobbies. Trust me, I know I can't even park at trailheads anymore. Like trailheads I could park at, you can't even park. So this is the new dilemma that we're going to have in the Bigfoot field. But as always, friends, keep it squatchy. We'll see you out on the trail. Deuces, everyone.
Take care. Good night.